Sydney is the capital city of the state of New South Wales, and the most populous city in Australia. Located on Australia's east coast, the metropolis surrounds Sydney Harbour and extends about 80 kilometres 50 miles from the Pacific Ocean in the east to the Blue Mountains in the west, and about 80 kilometres 50 miles from the Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park and the Hawkesbury River in the north and northwest, to the Royal National Park and MacArthur in the south and southwest. Greater Sydney consists of 658 suburbs, spread across 33 local government areas. Residents of the city are colloquially known as Sydneysiders. The estimated population in June 2022 was 5,297,089. The city is home to approximately 66% of the state's population. The city's nicknames include the Emerald City and the Harbour City. Aboriginal Australians have inhabited the Greater Sydney region for at least 30,000 years, and Aboriginal engravings and cultural sites are common. The traditional custodians of the land on which modern Sydney stands are the clans of the Darug, Dharawal, and Eora peoples. During his first Pacific voyage in 1770, James Cook charted the eastern coast of Australia, making landfall at Botany Bay. In 1788, the first fleet of convicts, led by Arthur Phillip, founded Sydney as a British penal colony, the first European settlement in Australia. After World War II, Sydney experienced mass migration, and by 2021 over 40% of the population was born overseas. Foreign countries of birth with the greatest representation are mainland China, India, the United Kingdom, Vietnam, and the Philippines. Despite being one of the most expensive cities in the world, Sydney frequently ranks in the top 10 most livable cities. It is classified as an alpha city by the Globalization and World Cities Research Network, indicating its influence in the region and throughout the world. Ranked 11th in the world for economic opportunity, Sydney has an advanced market economy with strengths in finance, manufacturing, and tourism. Established in 1850, the University of Sydney was Australia's first university and is regarded as one of the world's leading universities. Sydney has hosted major international sporting events such as the 2000 Summer Olympics. The city is among the top 15 most visited, with millions of tourists coming each year to see the city's landmarks. The city has over 1 million ha, 2,500,000 acres, of nature reserves and parks, and its notable natural features include Sydney Harbour and Royal National Park. The Sydney Harbour Bridge and the World Heritage-listed Sydney Opera House are major tourist attractions. Central Station is the hub of Sydney's rail network, and the main passenger airport serving the city is Kingsford Smith Airport, one of the world's oldest continually operating airports. The Anzac War Memorial in Hyde Park is a public memorial dedicated to the Australian Imperial Force of World War I. The Royal Botanic Garden is the most iconic green space in the region, hosting both scientific and leisure activities. There are 15 separate parks under the city administration. Parks within the city centre include Hyde Park, the Domain, and Prince Alfred Park. The Centennial Parklands is the largest park in the city of Sydney, comprising 189 ha, 470 acres. The inner suburbs include Centennial Park and Moore Park in the east, both within the City of Sydney local government area, while the outer suburbs contain Sydney Park and Royal National Park in the south, Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park in the north, and Western Sydney Parklands in the west, which is one of the largest urban parks in the world. The Royal National Park was proclaimed in 1879 and with 13,200 ha, 51 square miles, is the second oldest national park in the world. Hyde Park is the oldest parkland in the country. The largest park in the Sydney metropolitan area is Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park, established in 1894 with an area of 15,400 ha, 59 square miles. It is regarded for its well-preserved records of indigenous habitation, more than 800 rock engravings, cave drawings, and middens. Sydney is a gateway to Australia for many international visitors and ranks among the top 60 most visited cities in the world. Popular destinations include the Sydney Opera House, the Sydney Harbour Bridge, Watson's Bay, the Rocks, Sydney Tower, Darling Harbour, the Royal Botanic Garden, the Australian Museum, the Museum of Contemporary Art, the Art Gallery of New South Wales, the Queen Victoria Building, Sea Life Sydney Aquarium, Taronga Zoo, Bondi Beach, Luna Park, and Sydney Olympic Park. Major developmental projects designed to increase Sydney's tourism sector include a casino and hotel at Barangaroo and the redevelopment of East Darling Harbour, which involves a new exhibition and convention centre, now Australia's largest. Sydney is the highest-ranking city in the world for international students. More than 50,000 international students study at the city's universities and a further 50,000 study at its vocational and English language schools. International education contributes $1.6 billion to the local economy and creates demand for 4,000 local jobs each year. Sydney is both a laid-back beachside city and a thriving metropolis that boasts some of the Southern Hemisphere's best surf, landmarks, and activities. Whether you're looking to watch a show at the iconic Sydney Opera House, take to the waves at Bondi Beach or explore trendy areas like the Rocks and Darling Harbour, Sydney features something for everyone. Even Sydney-siders have an ideal mix of both worlds. Fashion-forward attire combines with a relaxed coastal vibe and no-worries attitude. It's no wonder this vibrant city down under is a natural choice for first-time Aussie visitors. In addition to tons of beaches and top-notch restaurants and bars, Australia's most populous city features an array of things to do. Thrill seekers can participate in heart-pounding activities like a Sydney Harbour Bridge climb, while visitors looking to unwind will appreciate a relaxing day at Coogee or Manly Beach or a peaceful stroll through the Royal Botanic Garden. There's also plenty of seasonal Sydney festivals and events to experience, such as Sculpture by the Sea, Vivid Sydney, and the Night Noodle Markets. Whether you're looking to enjoy a rugby match, hit up the city's museums or lounge along the shore, Sydney's got you covered. From its world-famous port and gorgeous natural surroundings of the Blue Mountains, through to its booming arts, cultural, and nightlife sectors, the world-famous city of Sydney has heaps to offer. With more than 5 million people living in the metropolitan region, there's an abundance of culture and history to discover from this coastal city. Greater Sydney runs from the Blue Mountains in the west to the Pacific Ocean in the east, and from the southern shores of Lake Macquarie in the north to Botany Bay in the south. Although just around a third of this territory is classed as urban, the urban area is home to the vast majority of the region's people. Sydney is unique in that it is nearly completely surrounded by dozens of national and regional parks, as well as many leisure areas. National parks within the city limits include Sydney Harbour, Garigal, and Lane Cove, with Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park to the north, and Botany Bay and Royal National Parks to the south. Sydney has a metropolitan population of 2.7 million and a population of around 170,000 within the inner city. Of the two main financial, trade, and cultural centres of Australia, the other being Melbourne, it is home to a range of different demographics. Founded by the British, the majority of Sydney residents are still of British and Irish ancestry. However, in the years following World War II, Australia welcomed a considerable number of immigrants from various European nations and Asia, including Lebanese, Arabic, Chinese, Turkish, and Vietnamese nationals. This is why many of the inner suburbs have a particular Greek or Italian flavor, and ethnic eateries can be found in practically every neighborhood. In terms of religion, the Anglican and Roman Catholic churches, each with its own cathedral, are the two main religious denominations in Sydney, although there are also many mosques, synagogues, and temples. Sydney is known across the world for its capabilities in the financial and professional services, information technology, health, education, and research industries. Sydney is also home to more than 600 global corporations with operations in Asia and the Pacific. Cooperative research centers, centers of excellence, specialized research centers, and medical health institutes all support these industries. The digital and information communication technology, ICT, sectors in Australia are headquartered in Sydney. The Sydney Startup Hub, the Southern Hemisphere's greatest startup powerhouse, is located in the harbour city. Sydney is the preferred site for 60 of Australia's 64 banks, as well as several of the country's main industry groups, financial institutions, and insurers. Sydney is the most populous city in Australia, with a metropolitan area population of approximately 4.28 million. Sydney is the state capital of New South Wales. The site of the first European colony in Australia, Sydney was established in 1788 at Sydney Cove by Arthur Phillip, leader of the first fleet from Britain. Sydney is located on Australia's southeast coast. The city is built around Port Jackson, which includes Sydney Harbour, leading to the city's nickname, the Harbour City. It is Australia's largest financial centre and is home to the Australian Stock Exchange. Sydney's leading economic sectors include property and business services, retail, manufacturing, tourism, and health and community services. Sydney is a major international tourist destination notable for its beaches and twin landmarks, the Sydney Opera House and the Harbour Bridge. The metropolitan area is surrounded by national parks, and contains many bays, rivers, and inlets. It has been recognized as a global city by the Loughborough University Group's 1999 inventory. The city has played host to numerous international sporting events, including the 1938 British Empire Games, 2000 Summer Olympics, and the 2003 Rugby World Cup. Sydney is one of the most multicultural cities in the world, which reflects its role as a major destination for immigrants to Australia. According to the Mercer Cost of Living Survey, Sydney is Australia's most expensive city, and the 21st most expensive in the world. A resident of the city is referred to as a Sydney-sider. Sydney is in a coastal basin bordered by the Pacific Ocean to the east, the Blue Mountains to the west, the Hawkesbury River to the north, and the Woronora Plateau to the south. Sydney lies on a submergent coastline, where the ocean level has risen to flood deep river valleys, rias, carved in the Hawkesbury sandstone. One of these drowned valleys, Port Jackson, better known as Sydney Harbour, is the largest natural harbour in the world. There are more than 70 harbour and ocean beaches, including the famous Bondi Beach, in the urban area. Sydney's urban area covers 651 square miles, as of 2001. This area includes the Central Coast and Blue Mountains as well as broad swathes of national park and other unurbanized land. Geographically, Sydney sprawls over two major regions, the Cumberland Plain, a relatively flat region lying to the south and west of the harbour, and the Hornsby Plateau, a sandstone plateau lying mainly to the north of the harbour, dissected by steep valleys. The oldest parts of the city are located in the flat areas south of the harbour. The North Shore was slower to develop because of its hilly topography, and was mostly a quiet backwater until the Sydney Harbour Bridge was opened in 1932, linking it to the rest of the city. The largest economic sectors in Sydney, measured by numbers of people employed, include property and business services, retail, manufacturing, and health and community services. Sydney is the largest corporate and financial centre in Australia and is also an important financial centre in the Asia-Pacific region. The Australian Stock Exchange and the Reserve Bank of Australia are located in Sydney, as are the headquarters of 90 banks and more than half of Australia's top companies, and the regional headquarters for around 500 multinational corporations. Fox Studios Australia has large movie studios in the city. Most Sydney-siders are native speakers of English, many have a second language, the most common being Arabic language Arabic, including the Lebanese dialect, Chinese languages, Mandarin, Cantonese, and Greek. Sydney is home to some of Australia's most prominent universities, and is the site of Australia's first university, the University of Sydney, established in 1850. There are 5 other public universities operating primarily in Sydney: the University of New South Wales, Macquarie University, the University of Technology, Sydney, the University of Western Sydney, and the Australian Catholic University, 2 out of 6 campuses. Other universities which operate secondary campuses in Sydney include the University of Notre Dame Australia, and the University of Wollongong. Sydney has a wide variety of cultural sites and institutions. Sydney's iconic Opera House has 5 theatres capable of hosting a range of performance styles. It is the home of Opera Australia, the third busiest opera company in the world, and the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. Other venues include the Sydney Town Hall, City Recital Hall, the State Theatre, and the Wharf Theatre. Sydney hosts many different festivals and some of Australia's largest social and cultural events. These include the Sydney Festival, Australia's largest festival, which is a celebration involving both indoor and free outdoor performances throughout January, the Big Day Out, a travelling rock music festival which originated in Sydney, the Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras along Oxford Street, the Sydney Film Festival, and many other smaller festivals such as Trofest and Archibald Prize, a competition organised by the Art Gallery of New South Wales. Sydney has several museums. The biggest are the Australian Museum, Natural History and Anthropology, the Powerhouse Museum, Science, Technology and Design, the Art Gallery of New South Wales, the Museum of Contemporary Art, and the Australian National Maritime Museum. Sport is an important part of the culture of the Australian state of New South Wales. Popular sports include rugby league, which has its Australian origins in Sydney, the capital of New South Wales, cricket, in which New South Wales has been the dominant state for much of its Australian history, and association football, soccer. The 3 commercial television networks, 7, 9, and 10, as well as the government national broadcast services, ABC and SBS, each having a presence in Sydney. Sydney is Australia's centre for film and media. Many of the landmarks in Sydney have been referenced, shown, and the setting for countless films and television programs. Sydney also has a wide amount of references to films that have been set in the city, the most famous being Finding Nemo, which was set in the famous Sydney Harbour. Most Sydney residents travel by car through the system of roads, freeways, and tollways, known as motorways. The most important trunk routes in the urban area form the 9 Metroid systems, which includes the 110-kilometre Sydney Orbital Network. Sydney is also served by extensive train, taxi, bus, and ferry networks. Kingsford Smith International Airport, located in the suburb of Mascot, is Sydney's main airport, and the oldest continuously operating commercial airport in the world. The smaller Bankstown Airport mainly serves private and general aviation. There are light aviation airfields at Hoxton Park and Camden. RAF Base Richmond lies to the northwest of the city. Thank you for watching this video.